you rolling then?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, right, okay.
Where are we heading now?
Well, Diego, your friend introduced me to Owen Jones, and we're going to go and see him. He lives near Lewes, so I've picked you up, and we're just headed over there now. Pete seems to be someone who just is quite honest and vulnerable, and he's quite open with his heart about things, and I'm always attracted to that in people who live in a way where they're vulnerable and they're honest, and hopefully we'll get to talk about spirituality a little bit too, because I think that's what I got a real sense of when I've watched his documentaries.
Yeah, he's been a vicar here in Firle for many years now.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a car just coming in. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too. I'm all right.
This is Diego.
Hi.
Diego. Here, there is no Greek, there is no Jew. And I take that very seriously. Because what he was saying is, there's all this, nationhood. What is nationhood? What is nationality? So that, in the eyes of divine love, matters not. You're welcome.
Yeah. So, what are you pushing against in that?
I'm pushing against narrow-mindedness. I'm pushing against tribalism. And to a certain degree, we're pushing against this very strong spell called nationality. When I was traveling, people would say, where are you from? And I started off by saying, I'm from the British Isles. And then I thought, no, this really isn't working for me. So I said, I'm from planet Earth. Where are you from? And some of them would go, wow. But others kind of went, yeah, okay, I'm from planet Earth too. And I'm much more comfortable with that. I think if we look especially now about what's happening with nationhood,
Yeah.
and the religious involvement in actually underpinning that I would argue is becoming and has always been very toxic.
Another thing, we finished off by saying in the church, the culture should be circular. When I first started doing all this stuff, a friend of mine, when I was a youth minister in Surrey, they were a very wealthy, well-resourced church in Cheam.
Did they have a secretary?
Yeah, of course.
Fantastic.
But they also had an opportunity because of that to have a relationship with people in other countries.
Yeah.
And one of those kind of networks or relationships was Kampala in Uganda.
Yeah.
I became good friends with the Bishop of Kampala.
Right.
A lovely guy called Zach. He must be about 70 now.
Yeah.
And he said, Sam, what you're saying is right, but it's not church, it's Christianity entirely.
So he was saying we've got this issue in Kampala.
Yeah, we've got it everywhere.
Okay.
It's not what you're doing. It's.
But I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but in the West, or in old Europe, we're led to believe that, African Christianity is thriving. It's kind of open and moving and fluid. And
he resigned as a bishop because it wasn't.
Okay. Well, then Christianity has to look at how this has happened, how we've ended up where we've ended up culturally. Nothing can change until we understand how that has come to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before, while we were in the church, you said the 60s. That was a crunch point. There was the freedom, sexual liberation, individuality,
Love.
Love. Yeah, and that was a cultural turning point.
I think it was a cultural turning point for Western Europe, really.
Yeah.
And
the US.
And the US, indeed. And it just threw Christianity completely off balance. It had no response for it. You were going into these buildings where essentially, the raison d'etre had been there for well over 1,000 years. And here was this huge cultural wave that hit. And they just didn't know what to do.
And that was certainly one. So traditional conservative church responded by becoming entrenched.
Yeah.
The American church, so John Wimber and Vineyard, they brought in righteous brothers. He was the keyboard player for them, and brought that music, which was representative of that love, and wrap Jesus around it, or place him hopefully in the center. But that was and so then from my perspective, because it's cool that you like Scott Matthews, which is talking about that. My ideal is Scott Matthews is playing some tune, and somehow I'm, and anyone else that's listening, is brought into I glorify you, Christ, in that music thing. So that's my ideal, and that's certainly what John Wimber was he started off. Now we've ended up in a kind of a soft rock country. Copy after copy after copy, devoid of any real guts.
No, it's horrible. I mean, it's just nothing other than horrible. But I mean, look at the lyrics of the 60s and the 70s. Now, look at what's happening in rap. What's being expressed. Alienation, separation, loss. And these are deeply Christian icons in terms of recognizing our humanity. But we couldn't, at that point, step out of our aspic and go, hey, I get it. We just didn't get it. We saw it as kind of countercultural, drug-fueled, sexuality gone crazy. And it just seemed to terrify us. It didn't terrify me.
So, yeah, exactly. So you, and that's what I want to know about you. So my thing is always I want to understand people through story, not opinion.
Yeah.
So you sent to Australia because you didn't do well in school, right?
Let's just call it didn't do well.
Okay, didn't do well, which I can relate to in a few different places as well. What was your spirituality? So I'm trying to. I can't place how old you are. I can't. But where? How did you fit with this? When did you become a Christian or give your life to Christ or whatever language you're supposed to use? When did stuff change for you where Christ was the centre?
I think over my life, Christ has become increasingly central. I have never encountered such profound teaching on love. When I look at the world religions, and I've been privileged to engage with many of them, albeit superficially in some aspects, but I have never encountered such an incredible prophetic life of love. And it is that I have begun to understand as I've got older. And it's that I admire and with all of my heart. And I see it as nothing other than beautiful and the great hope for humanity. And it still, for me, retains that. And as I've got older, that has become stronger within me. And I feel more and more privileged just to be able to engage with those words. I'm not going to get evangelical about it because I see that as brittle and wooden, that I am to live my life. This isn't a rule. This is something that you open your heart to, the possibility there, deep within the image of God, that sits within each one of us, that I would argue sits within every leaf, within every wing, within every ocean, within every hill and sea. And that is what has overpowered me. And I am more and more enamored than I ever have been.
And we mentioned a friend of yours who was a vicar.
Indeed.
What, like 10 miles away?
10 miles away.
And he threw the towel in a couple of months ago.
Yeah, he did, yeah. He was someone I admired greatly.
What's going on at the moment between what you said then, and I have conversations like that in all sorts of places, and it's energizing and it's exciting and it's fulfilling, and that bitterness that isn't fully us or is fully us livens, and you think, oh, this is exciting. But how does that fit with a guy who personified a lot of that?
He did.
Who threw the towel in? Why? When we spoke on the phone about culture, when we talk about spirituality, what's the...
Because the culture does not embody that. The culture does not reflect that. You know, very sadly and tragically, when you look at Christianity in this country, what do you see? What do I see? What do my friends see? What do my children see? You know, they see division. They see a rigidity that is, you know...
They see abuse.
They see abuse.
Which is the opposite.
But I mean, you know, I don't want to make light in any way of what has happened within the hierarchy over the last 6 months. But I mean, that is systematic of an institution that cannot deal with difference. That cannot deal... I mean, it's quite... Look at the way the church is tearing itself apart over sexuality. Living in love and faith. Come on. Are you really going to call it that?
Yeah.
You know, it's just a kind of soft soaping. Let's just get real here.
Yeah.
We're not very good at dealing with difference. Why aren't we very good at dealing with difference? Because we have a culture that it terrifies.
Some of that might be theological. So, you read Leviticus. I mean, when I was younger, I read the whole Bible a bunch of times right through.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd always get like, oh no, I'm reading it all through, but I've got to get to Leviticus. I mean, oh my goodness.
What about kings?
Well, that's kind of fun. There's some proper violence in there. And at least you kind of get this flip-flopping of you did good inside of the law, did bad.
Yeah, no.
But you read Leviticus and you fear it. I mean, you fear shellfish, you fear tattoos.
Owls.
Is that? No, I don't know.
No, I don't think you're allowed to eat owls.
Oh no, you're not. No.
Yeah.
You fear witchcraft, which again, you know, that's where I was interested to see that you did the nudie kind of ritual with witches in Sydney.
Absolutely.
It says in Leviticus you shouldn't, so you'd fear it. I would be like, oh gosh, that's a bit hairy. I've got a friend his serious girlfriend is a witch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't, you know, I'm not like freaked out or worried by her, but I think if she invited me to something, I'm not sure I would, you know.
Where's the light? Does Buddhism contain light? Does Islam contain light? Does paganism contain light?
You tell. Well, you've done that. You've been there, done it. So where did you see light?
I saw light in all of these places. I saw some darkness too, but I see darkness in Christianity. Yeah. So let's just get down off our high horse. And, you know, I've got a lot to learn from my pagan friends. I've got a lot to learn from my white witch friends who tell me, you know, that the planet is sacred, that the raindrop is sacred, the robin is sacred. I don't hear that from Christianity. I've got a lot to learn from my Buddhist friends who tell me, Peter, You just need to sit in utter silence. You need to learn to be still, and then you will know.
What stands out most to you, if you, that sort of, whether it's a transcendent experience, whether it's a feeling fulfilled in the kind of how Paul writes about it.
Yeah.
Where have you experienced that most?
I experience that every day. I experience that. I experience that walking down the street. I experience that looking at an oak tree. I experience that looking at a mother holding a baby. My God, how beautiful is that? It's everywhere. I mean, as the man says, the blind see, the deaf hear. He was talking about consciousness. Open your heart to love, your capacity for love. And that's hard, that's terrifying. But yeah, we're in here for a short time. Come on.
Yeah.
Do it. Do it.
How?
Do it.
Yeah, but how?
Because
okay, so
how do you do it?
You don't do it going to church every Sunday singing a Matt Redman song, do you? I mean, some people do, maybe.
I see church as somewhere to fill up, as somewhere to recharge my battery. You know, I've got to deal with the world. I'm a fickle mess of a human being, and I see just that 1 hour.
Yeah.
1 hour on a Sunday, just to sit down and sing some rather questionable songs, listen to a dreadful sermon. But I'm
your delivery.
more than likely. But more importantly, I might come out and I might have just had 10 seconds of, oh, I can feel it now. Yes, I'm here. Hello. Just 10 seconds is enough. 1 second is enough. And that's what church is for. Churches isn't where we come together because we're all the same. It isn't where we come together necessarily to worship, although worship is beautiful. But it's where we come together to experience divine love, to experience divine energy, to experience divine being and ourself under that light, in that light. That's what church is for. And if you want to call that cultural, which I never will, then, you know, you can do that. But for me, the culture has overwhelmed that fragile beauty.
With what?
With mission statistics, with safeguarding. I know it's necessary. But with all the demands of an institution, the church is now so weakened in numbers that the institution is overwhelming the raison d'etre of its being. And as a parish priest, that's tough. You can either go, I have to do this, I have to conform to this, or you can just go, I'm not doing it today. I'm not even going to do it tomorrow. I might do it in a month's time. This is not the most important thing. But not the most important thing has become the rails on which it's trudging along, and it's just trudging right now.
So what now?
I take no pleasure in saying that.
No.
Yeah.
No, because I think there are plenty of people that do. But what you spoke about in terms of that, having that experience or that meeting point in church, I think is the point. But when the rails are clearer than the destiny, or whatever we're trying to, whichever analogy I can't think up.
When the destination begins on the rails.
I mean, it really is rubbish. You know, you don't get that.
Well, you don't
I'm
get
not being
that.
served.
No. I understand that, and this is what I hear all the time. You know, I hear people tip up here and go, "Whoa, I never knew it could be like this. I never knew I would feel like this in this context."
Yeah.
And
It's when I was, leading in churches, you get such a kick out of that. It's more so than anything.
yeah, I mean, I really don't think it's got anything to do with me.
No, but enjoy it a bit. No.
Yeah, I mean,
I did. I was in my 20s. I was.
yeah, okay, yeah, no, I'm kind of. But yeah, that's what they're for. You're meant to go in and feel tiny and vast, and you're meant to be able to go in and burst into tears and say, "God, I'm sorry. I just screwed up so badly. I lied. I cheated. I'm so sorry," because we're all sorry that we, messed up badly in that sense. We all know we have. And that's what they're there for. The floor is full of tears and the ceiling is full of laughter. That's the only places within our culture that hold that. And when they're being denuded and kind of undermined by this kind of rigid institutional conservatism, then that is not serving Christian. It's not serving Christ. It's not serving love. And I've been saying it for 30 years, and they've all gone, you're just a pain in the arse.
You've been here 30 years.
I've been here 20 years.
So
I've been a priest 30 years. What a privilege. But, and I don't want to be a pain in the arse. I don't want to be this dreadful term of a loose cannon. I'm just being me, and I'm just saying what's on my heart. And that's the way it is.
But we've got to a point now where the people that were firing shots early are being listened to.
You reckon?
by
Really?
Well,
I don't see that. I really don't see that. I still see, once the die is cast, then, that's who you are. I do not see a listening church. I do not see a listening hierarchy. I do not see it. I see it as a hierarchy intent on maintaining what they have. And I would say that is the problem. It's what we have arrived at is the problem.
What
to
is it?
maintain that
yeah.
is just going to lead us further downhill.
Well, it is. It's not. Nothing static. The movement is downhill at the moment.
Yeah.
Categorically.
Yeah, well, I mean, clearly ever since I've been a priest.
Right.
Yeah, it's been going downhill. And I've been going, whoa, no, wait a minute, it's all going downhill. And they're just going, you're a pain in the arse. And I get that.
Is it going downhill here?
No, it's not.
Yeah, what's going on here?
I've got no idea. People just keep arriving.
What's happening? What's been happening?
This village has got 150 people living in it, and the other village that I serve has the same, and there's an even smaller one with 60 people. If you take average church going as being under 1%, are now going to church on a Sunday. So that's 1.5 in one village and 0.6 in two villages and 0.6 of a person in another village. That's kind of how desperate it's become, which means that parishes like this are completely within the numbers, are completely unsustainable.
Yeah.
To actually have.
Well, you can't even get one person to show up. A percentage of something.
But I mean, if that's what the figures are telling you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, then, but Look, it isn't rocket science. If you have somewhere that is open-hearted and is able to say the difficult things, is able to earth its center in love, then it's easy. It's not hard. Then people just arrive because they want to be there.
I mean, we've got a gorgeous day today. It feels like, it doesn't feel like spring has arrived in its entirety. We just need some of the leaves to go green again. But
it's an introduction.
Yeah.
It's the build-up.
It is. But walking around, driving through the village, it's ideal in every respect. So,
it looks ideal, but you scratch the surface and there's some real issues here. These are feudal villages. There's one family that owns all of it,
right?
Essentially. So there's some big issues going on here.
Okay. But part of me thinks, looking at the flowers pushing their way through the soil and hearing all these beautiful birds. You had pheasants in the garden.
Yeah.
For me, that connection to God seems a little bit more straightforward than on a grey concrete place in Coventry or whatever.
I don't know. I think God is on the grey concrete bench in Coventry. Absolutely. There is still, I think, an essence, a tiny essence of this thing called Anglicanism, which is gentle and accepting and caring and tending. It tends to people, and it tends to love. It tends to pain. And there is still just a little glimmer of that left within the culture. And it is that, essentially, that everyone still loves. I get people in their 40s saying, I remember the vicar that came to my school. I didn't understand what he was talking about, but he had such a lovely energy, and I felt it. And I can feel a little bit when I walk into buildings like this. I can feel that there is something beautiful there.
Yeah.
And I want to celebrate that. People might say, oh, well, you're harking back to a world that cannot exist. You've got one parish priest looking after 11, 12, 13 parishes. That way of being is just not possible anymore. But it's that way of being that really kind of underpinned the Anglican identity. If you take away what many of the, what Bronte was writing about, and the terrible depictions of vicars in Victorian literature, and which must have been true in many ways, but there is still something beautiful there, and I want to honour that. And that, the idea of being a country parson, that still holds something beautiful, and if we could honour that, then it's not rocket science.
But a friend of mine with kids said something about what I wouldn't trust my children in my local church. I wouldn't let them. I wouldn't leave them on their own.
Yeah, I think we also have to understand that Mammon, is going for us. Is going for us because we represent non-materialism. I represent non-materialism. I would openly say, and have said, and will continue to say, that the idea of ownership is just a belief system. It's not a reality. So we represent, and we should represent, everything that counters that materialistic thinking, because it's the materialistic thinking that has given us species extinction, global warming, poverty, on a massive scale. And I stand, I'm not speaking that language. I'm speaking a different language which doesn't hold to those values. And therefore we are a threat. I am a threat, and I am delighted to be a threat to the banks and to the insurance companies and to those who are selling me rubbish. And I will give the other side of the coin, which is most of this is bullshit. And let's start by loving each other, and then perhaps we can create a world that is just and fair and beautiful.
And we're caught up in this. Society is becoming so one thing actually, this is a, maybe we start wrapping up, but the countercultural thing I've always warmed to, and I've ignored it lately. But
but I'm so sorry to interrupt you again, but the church is not countercultural. The church, this is where everything starts to fray and fall
because
apart.
society is so nihilistic right now.
Society is so nihilistic, and if the church is invested or has to be invested in that for its apparent financial survival, then we're culpable. And that's the great tension. The tension of the church as part of the establishment.
There was a guy who I went motorcycling in Exmoor last week, and you go with a bunch of other guys.
Did you go to the Pilton Arms?
It was the
Baltimore Arms, the last Wild West pub in the land.
Right, no, I didn't. I should have gone there.
I walked in there.
Yeah.
And I was on my own, it's 3:00 in the afternoon, and there's a man sitting in thigh-length boots with his feet up on a wood burner, smoking.
Great. Did you ask for a fag just for that moment?
No, I didn't. And then he said, "Help yourself and put the money behind the bar."
Amazing.
So I thought, this is my type of pub. And we just carried on from there. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
The thing I was doing, I was with a bunch of strangers. It was like a enduro day or all off road, and there are guys in their 50s and 60s, and we were talking about imagine having to be like teenage 20s today.
What?
And I said imagine having to get your head around Tinder, and that's probably I'm out of date with that. He said what he can't stand is the Just Stop Oil. He said it is so, there's a self-harm to it. He said people are just trying to get to work, or they're wanting to enjoy a gallery or a theatre, whatever, and they throw soup all over it, or they shout in the middle of the performance of something you've saved up for ages to go and see, or whatever.
Great.
He said it's so... He didn't say nihilistic, but that's essentially how I interpreted it. He was saying that, but when you talk about being countercultural, there's this... At the moment, the response to being countercultural is a self-harm, from my interpretation, to get the clicks, to get the eyeballs, to, in the same way that YouTube, I should say like fuck and then put that in the title, and that will get me hits because it's Christian and he's just sworn. That's so dull, it's so boring. Now,
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
So how do we, when you're talking about being countercultural, love, I understand, I'm trying to warm towards what you're saying, and I want to get it, and of course I want to, but how are you teaching, or how are you embodying being countercultural without fighting the nihilistic culture of you're a number, you need to generate cash, you need to make sure you've got a decent pension, and then you just die. What's the
is that after the 45-year mortgage?
Yeah, exactly. I turned 45 last week, so I'm just thinking about I'm just midlife crisis or us right now.
Go for it. Oh no, really do it. You really have a big one. That's my advice.
But the world is not promising anything. Society doesn't promise anything. The media doesn't promise anything. Everything is hopeless. So when you talk about being countercultural around and saying value nature, value the environment, the example that we're set right now is equally nihilistic?
I think the big thing over the next 100 years, over the next century, will be our relationship with the planet, because you don't need me to tell you that that's really kind of coming to a head. That's if we don't, if the warrior cult does not destroy us all before then, and it is a cult. You just have to tune into half of Hollywood's output to realize what a cult it is. I think, or I feel that the step that needs to be made is to end this terrible idea, largely underpinned by the Judeo-Christian perspective, that we are separate from the rest of the natural world, that we somehow have more rights to life than a robin, than a bottlenose dolphin. It's that understanding that is destroying everything, our arrogance, our lack of recognizing our vulnerability as being similar to every other being. We have put ourselves on a lonely pedestal. And should we begin to offer love and care to the natural world, should we begin to actually understand that I cannot breathe, speak, function in any way without the gifts that I am continually given by the environment for this human to be a being. That is the step we need to take. I think if we can do that, and it isn't about gluing your hands to an underground train, although I have to say I have great respect for people that do that, for people that are the pain in the arse. And it's ultimately about leaving this dreadful anthropocentric, human-centered idea of love behind and making it much bigger to embrace all life forms in all of their contradiction and in all of their beauty and in all of their ugliness. We're being asked to extend, to widen our understanding of love and who is deserving of it.